Welcome to week 3 of HairFest 2021 at Natural Beauty Summit. I'm your host, Salome Sallehy, founder and president at Sugar Wax, and I'm thrilled to be sharing one of the most insightful and informative conversations about silicones and sulfates and how they relate to hair. We have all heard about sulphate-free or silicone-free products, and as consumers, that immediately puts us on the defensive. If brands are going through the trouble of labeling their products as silicone-free or sulphate-free, then those ingredients must be bad, right? And then you have the other camp making claims that sulfates are actually not harmful at all. Well, with convincing arguments on both sides, I knew that the person that would help me solve this riddle would be Regina Di Silvestro, ethnobotanist, founder, and conjurer of natural magic. My guest Regina is one of the greatest minds in botanical formulations. Her products in hair, skin, and body care are at least 98% natural and some of the most powerful products I've ever used. If you're as confused as I was about sulfates, silicones, and salt, and how these ingredients affect hair and skin, then you're in for a treat. Stay tuned for my conversation with Regina Di Silvestro. Hi everyone, welcome back to Natural Beauty Summit's Natural Hair Fest 2021. Today I'm talking to one of my favorite people in the natural beauty space, Regina Di Silvestro, and she is the founder of RD Alchemy. And if you have been a part of our events in the past, you have probably seen one of my previous interviews with her. But I'm so excited to have her on board, and you guys are in for a major treat. So hi, Regina.
Hi, Salome. Nice to see you again. Thank you so much for having me. I love giving you guys as much information as I can whenever I can. So it's wonderful to be here.
You are a wealth of knowledge, a total walking encyclopedia. So I'm excited to have you on. And I'm excited to talk about your hairline because, you know, that's fairly new. And I've obviously tried some of the products and loving them, as you already said. But we'll get into, you know, some of that a little bit later on in the conversation. I wanted to start with a question that touches on your background in ethnobotany. And with all of this wealth of information that you have, you take a really different approach to ingredients. I have found that a lot of brands that are moving towards more natural or sustainable ingredients take the approach of like eliminating the bad stuff, whereas you take a really different approach and you're about adding in all the good stuff, and in some cases a lot of it. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe some of the like common hair scenarios and issues that you come across and how you use ingredients to help with that?
So great question, Salome. How to use ingredients to deal with hair concerns, and then also as far as the ethnobotany, that's really what we're background is. So we take the overall approach of having products, usually plant-based products, and putting them into our products, skincare and hair care, for example, to help it really maximize the benefit and not just do something that's going to be in there for greenwashing on the label, like a lot of companies do, where they'll mention, oh, there's this herb in this product, or there's this particular ingredient, a vitamin or whatnot, but maybe it won't do something major into that product, or it won't be in enough concentration for it to go ahead and have the benefit that it needs to be. So we definitely work with trying to add in products that are beneficial and active, as well as taking out the inactive or inactive stuff that's going to be potentially toxic or irritating, or maybe just there for the feel of the product or for the texture of the product, but doesn't really lend itself to the activity or the benefit for the result. And that's a real common thing with other companies. A lot of the companies will put texturizers in their hair care products. They'll put emulsifiers that aren't necessary. They'll put a higher amount of surfactants or whatnot in there. And then that will contribute to an irritating effect or an issue perhaps down the road where the hair may dry out and whatnot. And then in the flip side, they may not put in the active ingredients that's going to have all the beneficial activity or help the hair restore or restructure to be healthier. And so like common hair concerns, a lot of time the most common is dry hair. A lot of people suffer from dry hair. So we always want to put in not only ingredients that are going to moisturize the hair, like certain oils, or you have certain essential oils as well can moisturize besides a carrier oil, but other types of herbal extracts and vitamins, they help to retain moisture, humectants like squalane and so forth. Those are going to help. But then we also want to eliminate or reduce significantly the irritating or drying ingredients that are in hair care. And what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of the products they're using have ingredients in them that are probably drying out their hair. So they may start with dry hair naturally, just who they are, but then they're drying it out even more by using your common everyday brand of shampoo, conditioner, and styling products. And then they're offsetting that dryness with moisturizing products from those kinds of brands as well. And so they're just getting this common feedback loop where they end up getting dry and then trying to offset the dryness with more ingredients. Those ingredients tend to actually dry out the hair over time, so it keeps drying it out. So with our company, we're always trying to eliminate or reduce the amount of irritating or drying out products in the formula, and then adding ingredients that are going to help it. And so that's really the approach with natural products in general, is you want to do something that's more helpful and not as harmful.
Yeah, and I want to kind of highlight one thing that, when I was formulating with our chemist for sugar wax products, even some of the skincare products, I find that the process of formulation kind of starts like it's like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It always starts with really good intentions. It's always like, okay, what do you want this product to do? And like, how do you want it to feel? And, you start building a formula with all of your good intentions. But then what ends up happening is, okay, now we need to check some boxes for shelf life, for this, for that. And then
Right.
adding in just like crazy unnecessary amounts of like preservatives and all of the things that you said that end up actually having a counter effect to the
Right.
original good intentions. Now,
Right. And sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, because I want to jump on that. You're so right. And that is a huge, huge issue about it. And not just in the hair care world, but skincare and makeup and all sorts. A lot of people don't realize that probably about 80 to 90% of the brands out there that they see are not intended to make the individual healthier, happier, look good, feel good. They do to a point. They want them to look good, feel good, but it's really short term. It's cosmetically. And like you said, they have all those check boxes to select off so that they can get the product to market and make money. Because most of those brands are in it just to have a business and make money. Their mission statement's there for advertising purposes. It's not necessarily something they're really passionate about. And therefore, they're going to try to produce a product that's as universally accepted and can handle wider distribution. So those wider distribution channels don't want the products to go bad on the shelf after 6 months of being in a warehouse somewhere, maybe in Canada or wherever it may be. So they want to make sure that they have adequate preservation. So they may not just put in one preservative, they might put in like 4 or 5. And the same thing is true for emulsifiers for the hair care market, especially. You'll find a number of emulsifiers within a hair care product that aren't necessary really for the formula, but manufacturers or formulators will put that in because they want to make sure that the emulsion doesn't break after 4 months, 3 months, 6 months, or maybe a year or two sitting on the shelf somewhere after everything's gone through the distribution and retail. And that's quite the difference with our companies. We're more direct to consumer. We don't do as much distribution. We're more small batch, so we don't make things in large quantities and let it sit for a long time. So we don't necessarily need 4 or 5 different preserving agents or emulsifying agents. And that's quite different from what most consumers are going to be used to. and where a lot of the change happens and the transformation happens.
Absolutely. I want to keep talking about ingredients because there seems to be so much controversial information out there about ingredients.
Mhm.
But I want to start with something really basic because, you know, today we're talking about hair, and there seems to be information about hair ingredients that are quite different from information about skin ingredients.
Mhm.
So let's start with something really basic like salt. I mean, it's
Mhm.
natural, it's seemingly like not harmful, but it's talked about quite differently in hair versus skin. Can you talk about that and how, as consumers, we need to better understand the role of salt?
Sure, sure. So most salt is in hair care products for two reasons. It's either to thicken the surfactant that's in there, which is usually a sulfate-based surfactant and normally found in like shampoos and stuff. Surfactants are going to be the ingredients that create the foaming and then do the cleansing. So a lot of sulfate-based surfactants actually require the addition of salt, sodium chloride, so for it to thicken up the formula. So in fact, if you see sodium chloride in your formula, 90% of the time, you're going to have a sulfate type of surfactant in there, maybe a different derivative. The other form of salt that they'll use is for texturizing sprays, like the beachy wave sprays and the salt texturizers. And those will create a different bond in the hair and allow it to curl. And then what happens there is you're going to have an overall kind of crunching effect and like curling effect with the salt. So it does give really great waves, but the major thing that's an issue with salt is it's going to dry out the hair. And so you don't necessarily want to use it. If you're using it in your regular shampoo, that's one of the contributing factors besides a surfactant being damaging or harsh. If it is a sulfate-based one, then the salt in it as well can be drying out. In the salt sprays or the texturizing sprays that you've seen on the market, those usually contain a regular sodium chloride salt, which can dry out the hair. It creates a nice curl and wave to it, but it's going to dry out the hair overall and create damage. So even though you're getting a great styling effect, long term, you're going to want to balance that out with like a deep conditioner, something that will offset that drying salt aspect. But it is very common, especially for the surfactant issue where you see it, in the ingredient formula with the sulfates, so that, and it's mainly they're just a thicken. So it's one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, who doesn't love a good beach wave, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So you have a product that has that same effect, but it doesn't have salt in it. What do you use
Right.
instead?
So we use basically like we don't use sodium chloride. We use different herbal extracts and then also magnesium sulfate, which is it's Epsom salt. So that works differently on the hair. It creates still the curl and the tightness, but it doesn't dry out the hair as like sodium chloride would. So the other thing is we put in other moisturizers in it to help offset any other kind of curl, because when you're curling the hair and you're creating that steam bonded curl up, it cause kind of dryness in general. A lot of curly hair tends to be more of the drier side and needs extra moisturization. So that's the other difference, is creating a product not only to do what you're intending it to do, which in this case is to curl, create a beachy wave, but to moisturize and really nourish the hair, so that this way it can look better in the long run and not have issues later down the road.
Now, you already touched on sulfates, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into sulfates and silicones because they are such a huge topic in hair. And there's honestly, even I'm kind of confused about it because there's compelling arguments on both sides.
Right.
Is it good or is it bad? Are sulfates all that bad? Are silicones all that bad? And I would love for you to talk about those two ingredients from the
Sure.
perspective of hair, maybe versus skin.
Oh, good. Yeah, definitely. So we'll start with sulfates. Sulfates are your surfactants. So those are the ingredients that are going to help with the foaming and cleansing aspect, kind of work like the soap, even though they're not considered a soap. So they're the ones that are going to cleanse the dirt oils out of the hair. And a lot of brands will put a sulfate type of surfactant in the product. And that's good in the sense of cleansing, but it's drying. It can be irritating to some individuals. And a lot of times too, what the issue is not only the type of product, like the sulfate in general, but it's the quantity of it as well, the concentration. In most shampoos, a lot of people don't realize the majority of shampoo that you're using on a regular brand, not a natural brand, is going to have anywhere from 50 to 75% of the shampoo being that straight surfactant product is usually asked, but yeah, it's normally at least 50%. And a lot of times they'll include other sulfates or other types of surfactants to kind of give it a more well-roundedness. So with that, there are a lot of controversies with sulfates in general, mainly because they're drying, they're irritating, they can be harmful when you use them regularly. Harmful, not necessarily, it's in this case for the hair and whatnot, but they can be irritating and drying to the scalp. And then they'll a lot of times just dry and open up the cuticle too much of the hair shaft and create an overall overwhelming kind of dryness and issue with it. And then if it does get onto skin, it can cause irritation and rashes in that sense. So it's really a combination, not only the ingredient being a problem, but then the concentration that you find those ingredients in most shampoos, for example, are going to be an even greater problem because you're putting on a larger concentration onto the scalp or onto the hair. And the goal is for the company, they want to open up the hair cuticle, they want to allow the product to get in there and absorb and obtain all the other dirt and oils. And then you rinse that out as you wash out, and then you go over it with a conditioner. That's also part of the reason why you'll find a lot of conditioning ingredients in shampoos, is because it's so harsh on the hair shaft, trying to expose that cuticle and then remove it, that they want to then smooth it back down and kind of repair some of the initial damage that those sulfates will create. So we don't use sulfates in our products because there's other surfactants. We use a sugar-based surfactant, kind of like you with the sugar wax. We find that it's very, very gentle. It's good to use on babies and very sensitive skin and sensitive scalp areas. So you don't have to worry about over irritation. We don't also put it in a large amount like other brands. So our usual surfactant amount for shampoos, to give you an idea, is anywhere from 15 to 20%. And 20% for us is kind of high, but we do want it to be, work good for everywhere as far as oily conditions and whatnot. But we find that with the use of the sugar-based surfactant, not the sulfate-based one, along with the decreased in concentration, we have found that you get a very good cleansing ability, but without overly irritating or overly stripping the hair. And that is really, really important because we don't want to have any issues in long term.
Yeah, and actually I tried one of your shampoos. Guys, Regina's not paying me to say any of this. This is real talk. But I had a little bit of the foaming because, with more natural shampoos, you don't get as much of the foaming.
Right.
A little bit of foaming, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm getting everywhere. And, but then afterwards, my hair felt like super clean.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I was really surprised.
And that's a big fallacy too. So in a lot of hair care markets, the intention for the consumer is to have a high amount of foam, especially in like Asian markets. They're all about having a large amount of foam in their shampoos and stuff. So in cleansers, we are one of the ones that you don't really need a lot of foam. And there are certain ingredients that are put into shampoos just to boost the foam. They may not even really act like the full-on surfactant, but just to be a foam booster so that people can get that sensory feel. And that's really the difference overall in a lot of natural products, but also in ours is we may take out some of the initial feel that the consumer's used to, but in the long run, they're getting what's really intended for the body and what's really more natural and what the body likes, which is not necessarily a huge amount of foam stripping out your natural oils of your hair, stripping out all the other products that could be good for the hair, and then leaving it dry and itchy and potentially flaky. And the other thing is a lot of those shampoos, if you don't condition well enough, or even if you do, but you don't try to moisturize the scalp, you'll end up with dry, flaky scalp and dandruff a lot of times, and you don't really realize it. And that's usually the shampoo that's causing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really, really deep and well-rounded explanation of sulfates and hair care products. Like I didn't even know about the 50 to 70%. That's crazy.
Yeah. It is. It's, and not only do they put in one sulfate or one surfactant, most other brands will put in 2 to 3. So on the ingredient list, you'll see some sort of sulfate derivative, maybe another sulfate derivative, maybe a cocoa betaine or a betaine of some sort. And those are all going to be different surfactants making the same kind of approach to the hair, which is going to be cleansing, but all together, they're going to be in a usually larger concentration and usually very much more irritating to the scalp and hair. So that's one thing why we don't want to use sulfates and why there's such a controversy in the market is because they're usually irritating. Now, some people can use sulfates with no problem. If you tend not to wash your hair very often, which we always recommend, don't wash it daily and whatnot, you don't normally need to. But with that, you can usually get away with like once a week or so, as long as you're conditioning really well. But otherwise, though, use something that's going to be less damaging. And then you won't have the issues as much with dryness or breakage or split ends or anything along those lines either. So the other good thing is that the less foam and the less harsh surfactant you're using on your hair and scalp, the less your scalp or your body reacts by producing more oil.
Yeah.
So people who complain, and this is really common, people who complain a lot about, well, I always have oily scalp or I have oily hair and it's common and it's constant, it's, every other day or every day. And no matter how much of shampoo or whatnot, it doesn't go away. That could just be how they are and how their makeup is. But mostly it's usually because they're overwashing and they're overwashing with harsher surfactants or a heavier concentration of surfactants. So what happens then is their body freaks out and their hair and scalp basically just starts to get more oily, the scalp produces more oil, and then it just creates this overwhelming like kind of loop, where you rinse off all the oil and reduce it all, and your body freaks out, goes, it needs to make more. So then it creates more, and then you end up with oily scalp, and then you just go right back. So yeah, definitely, if you can stay away from sulfates, we always recommend to try to do so as well.
Awesome.
And with silicones, it's the same kind of thing. So silicones are a huge thing, and you're probably hearing a lot more controversy lately with them, because in a lot of ways, silicones are a natural product. A lot of people don't realize that, but they are a natural product. They're basically silicone and oxygen blended together, bonded together. They make very large molecules. So what they do normally is they'll sit on top of the skin and they create what's known as like an occlusive effect, or if they're in the hair, they'll create a smoothing effect to the hair cuticle. So silicones will envelop the hair cuticle, smooth down all that portion, and then therefore create less frizz. They help create more shine. They help actually make everything smoother. And the silicones you might be familiar with is like dimethicone, simethicone. You also may have heard of like the siloxanes, the pentasiloxanes, cyclosoxanes. Those are all silicone derivatives. What I don't like about them, and what a lot of other companies are learning about them more and don't want to use them, is because as much as they create a nice smooth effect and they really do help to push down that cuticle, the one problem is that they're doing it so much that they actually can dry out hair. They can dry out your ends. They can over time dry out the strands because they're not allowing the moisture from the air or moisture from your product to get into that cuticle, because they're creating such a blockage with it. So styling wise, let's say you're going to a party, let's say you have your wedding or whatnot, you want to look your absolute 100% best. Silicones aren't going to damage the hair by using them like every now and again, but if you use them frequently or daily in your regular products, then they can cause damage. They can cause dryness. And to some individuals, a lot of people have found that they're irritating. So they can cause rashes or dryness to a point of like a redness and rash type of thing on their scalp. And they've pinpointed it to silicone. So in that case too, we try not to use a silicone-based product. But what we do use are more of your natural oils, items like squalane or glycerin, also any other type of peptide, herbal extract, vitamins. Those do work on smoothing down the hair cuticle, but they also do it in a form of moisturizing the hair, helping to nourish the hair. So you're getting a smooth effect, but without the overwhelming issue later down the road of dryness and irritation. And a lot of times, if you go to a salon and they're doing a wonderful blowout on you, and you come home afterwards and you're feeling like staticky and kind of dry, which is what a lot of consumers do. I mean, it's hard to bag on the hairstylists. I don't want to do that, but those silicone products that they're using in their products are what's causing that static kind of clinginess. A lot of times it's just drying out that whole hair shaft so much that it's causing it to react negatively with the hair and the surrounding environment on it.
I guess what I'm understanding from what you're saying is that a lot of the controversy or the way it's misunderstood is some of these controversial ingredients, they might not give you cancer, but they're not going to necessarily help your whatever hair concern or skin concern you're trying to address, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the big difference because a lot of people, of course, are worried about longer term effects. Is this going to cause longer issues or cancer or whatnot? And that's true. Some products are known to possibly do that. But what's more of a common issue, what you deal with more day to day on average, are the more sensory effects, the dryness, the irritation, the sensitivity, the performance of the products in general. So with these, a lot of people are more familiar with certain products that they think are benign. They hear that they're not necessarily dangerous or toxic, so they use those products with no issues, but then they find, oh, my hair's still this, or my hair's dry, or my scalp itches, or I keep breaking out on my scalp or something. And they don't realize it could just be their non-toxic products that they're using, even though they're not cancerous, they're just maybe not necessarily the best. And a lot of times silicones can be great, if you want to use them. I don't recommend them daily though. I recommend them very, very sparingly. And I find that when your hair is healthy, when you're not overly drying it out with harsh surfactants or with drying shampoos, and you're conditioning it well with real conditioner items, which we can talk about too if you want, not just an emulsifier, which is really common, or a variety of emulsifiers, you'll find that your hair is going to really work and perform the way you want it to without the need of the silicones or without the need of other products in that sense as well.
So since you bring it up, let's talk about that because
Mhm.
that wasn't one of my questions.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
that's my interest.
Uh-huh.
What do you mean like true conditioners versus emulsifiers?
So normal conditioning. So with the hair, you have different bonds with the hair. The hair needs, so you open it up so you have a hair shaft, and then you open up the cuticle of the hair with shampoo basically, and you allow it to get in there and to get all the dirt and oils, and then you rinse it out. With conditioners, the goal is to smooth back down that cuticle of the hair, allowing it to close down, retain moisture, and then also help it to be more moisturized, but then smooth and less frizzy and so forth, and be detangled, whatnot. So the traditional conditioners you find on most brands and markets will usually always contain some sort of synthetic, to a point, of a conditioning agent, normally like a quat that you may have been familiar with, or like benhentromodium sodium chloride. That one works to condition and smooth down that cuticle. But some people have irritations towards those ingredients. Some people get very dry. And over time, it does smooth down the hair shaft, but it doesn't do much more than that. It doesn't really help in any other way. Whereas a lot of natural ingredients, like certain oils and other certain more benign or general emulsifying agents, those are going to condition, and they can create not only the smoothness of the cuticle, but they can create the type of bond that's needed to create that smoothness as well. So they're not necessarily reducing the efficacy by using a more natural conditioning agent, but you're reducing the irritation, you're reducing the potential toxicity, you're reducing the dryness from overly drying out the hair shaft when you're using more of a natural type of conditioning agent, and not a quat or not a benhentromodium or whatnot, because those tend to be more irritating to most customers. So that's the main thing. Another popular thing that a lot of brands will do is to add a number of emulsifying agents. An emulsifier is something that's going to basically just blend your oil and water together and keep it in form. And so those are great for smoothing and conditioning the hair. It's like a lotion. Imagine putting that on and then rinsing that out. Your hair is going to be moist and really smooth. But what they'll do is they'll put in a number of emulsifying agents. And one reason for that is because they're trying to reduce the overall emulsion of the formula from separating. So because they have larger distribution, maybe in multiple warehouses over the whole world and for a longer period of time, and then they go into the retail markets for a long period of time, they don't want the product there sitting on the shelves and then all of a sudden separating, where you see the oil and water phase separating. So they'll put in different emulsifiers, not just for the hair conditioning advantage, but more just for the product advantage. Again, checking off that checklist like you had mentioned before, just to make sure it doesn't separate. And what that does to the hair, though, is it creates buildup. So over time, you're putting on tons of these emulsifying agents that are supposed to just mainly be there to help create an oil and water combination, but they also will have some smoothing, conditioning, moisturizing effects as well, and hydrating effects. But over time, if you have 3 to 4 different emulsifiers in your conditioner, you're going to create a product buildup, and then that can build up on the scalp, it can build up on the hair, and every now and again you need to clarify and cleanse that out so that your hair can breathe, basically. So
Absolutely. I noticed I got your hair detangler, and I
mhm.
noticed that that separates.
Oh
And
yes. Mhm.
yeah, and my kids love using it. So they'll like give it a shake. They like
Uh-huh.
the ritual of shaking it. But I think,
Cool.
this is a great segue into my next question, which is when people are transitioning from like more conventional drugstore on the shelf for like 5 years type of products
Mhm.
to more natural, maybe small batch, but like more natural, sustainable products,
Right.
the user experience sometimes is quite different.
Mhm.
Depending on what product category you're going into, it could be really different. Like you
Right.
have created this dry shampoo, which is actually really wet.
Right.
Like
Mhm.
the shaking that of the like detangler that you wouldn't necessarily need to do or even see whether you need to do it or not because you're buying something from the drugstore, or
Mhm.
like the smoothing oil from your line that I use that the first time I use it I'm like, oh, it looks more like a lotion, so I put
Mhm.
way too much on.
Yeah.
So what is your advice and what are some recommendations you can make for
Right.
people that are transitioning from the conventional like giant head of foam type of hair products to more natural ones? What can you tip us with?
That's a great question. And so part of the issue is throw out everything that you've ever heard or used before, the experiences you've had from prior products, and just start fresh because they are quite different, more natural products. And ours are very, very, very natural. Like you said, with the leave-in conditioner, for example, that does need to be shook before you spray it in. It does separate because all the oil ingredients or the essential oils and whatnot, you'll see visibly will separate when it's sitting on the shelf. The reason is we do that with our sprays because we don't want to put unnecessary emulsifying agents in it. We don't want to put a chemical in there that's just going to bond from the oil, bond to the oil, water, and blend it together and create a uniformity unless it's fully natural. So we don't want to add those synthetics because a couple of reasons. One, those synthetics can be dry and irritating or problematic for the hair in general, or it's just, in a lot of ways, when you think of formulation, it takes up space in your formula. So if a formula has to add up to 100% and you're adding in a 5% or 4% or 20% emulsifying agent, then you have a lot less room for your active ingredients. And we always try to make it more active, more herbal, more vitamins, more ingredients that are going to help the hair, the skin, or whatever you're working on, and less of the sensory texturizing type of ingredients, but yet still make it usable. So something like we found in our research, people were willing to, yeah, we'll just shake it up a few times before we spray it. That's not a problem. We can do that. And then it performs really, really well. So we don't have to worry about putting in an emulsifier. Other brands will put in those ingredients. Other brands are really, remember, based on their marketing team, their business advisors, their investment people who are in there to be just want to make money. So how do you make money by appealing to a smaller segment of people who are really into natural products? You don't normally, you want to make more money by appealing to people who are much more varied and have more of a traditional aspect to their use of hair care products, which would be more common synthetics or regular brands on the market. So they'll offset adding the active ingredients or the natural products with heavier amounts of emulsifying agents or conditioners. And then this way it causes more of an issue. So you don't necessarily want to just go with anything in general. You want to really make sure you're focusing on something that is going to perform not only for what you need it, but long term is going to give your body and your hair overall overwhelming health and wellness. And what a lot of people find using our products or more natural products in general is that there a lot of people find that once they use it, like, oh my gosh, I never realized that I didn't have to wash my hair every day. I always washed it every day because my hair was so oily. And so and that's because they were using shampoos or whatnot that was drying out their hair and scalp. So they find that there is quite a big difference once they start learning how to use it, and that they know that it is a little different. Like you yourself, you had said that you had tried using it and you used way too much. And that is a learning curve because you're used to a silicone-based product, perhaps, or you're used to something that you can use, a normal amount that you're used to and not have it perform the way it did. But with our products, it's always usually less is more for most of the cases. And that's we do have a lot of problems where people are using way too much of what they need to. And the idea is it's designed to work gently, but yet very effectively and not break your bank. So you don't have to use it all as much as you normally would and then run out of the product within a month or so. So less is more when you're going from conventional, normally synthetic brands to more natural, and then also give it time. Read the label, read the website, learn how to use the product because there's a good chance that it is a little bit different from what you're used to. For example, the reason why our hair oil serum, like you had mentioned, is you use too much and it became a little perhaps oily or whatnot. That's common because compared to a silicone-based product, ours is silicone-free. We don't necessarily need a lot. So you only need a smaller amount because it's going to perform a lot more overall in the
I put some on today.
there you go.
I'm just checking it that I put the right amount.
Yeah, it looks great.
Great tip. And I think I love, like, you just start with like just tossing out all the expectations, everything that you've kind of learned, and be open to new experiences. Less is absolutely more. I think that's a really good tip. And then one of the things that I've learned as I switch more and more products to natural is natural ingredients and products tend to be a lot more tactile. Like you want to work it into your hands, you want to massage it into the hair, like you want to kind of play with it and have fun. And whereas we're kind of like, quick, put this in, take this out. And you really, really see the benefits of the ingredients when you're learning about how to use the product correctly. I love that.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of people too, if they've come from full-on convention and they've now made a switch, there's usually a learning curve. So they'll go through and they'll end up having a slight learning curve where they end up maybe not liking the potential new product because it's not what they're used to. Like you mentioned, the foaming quality of the shampoo wasn't as great as what they're normally used to. So a lot of people immediately think, oh, this is not cleansing. This isn't, getting my hair as clean as it should. This isn't performing the way. And really what's the problem is we've all been trained wrong. Like really, we've all been brainwashed to think that you need a high amount of foam to have a good cleansing experience. And really, we don't need that. Your scalp and body doesn't. In fact, a lot of people can get away just with rinsing their hair with water and still get enough cleansing with just that if they wanted to. It wouldn't be the best, but I mean, in general, the body could adapt to that and work with that. So a lot of it is, like I said, starting from scratch and then just getting through that learning curve and educating themselves. We do try to do a lot of education here because it is a little bit different from what most people are used to. And we've had a lot of people ask that same kind of thing as far as it doesn't foam as much. Is it working? What do I use, after? How do I do that? And so just the education of a natural product at any brand that they're going to start trying to use is really important because it is super different from what we're used to. But the nice benefit is that it's going to be not only healthier, but you're probably going to like your results much better overall. So.
Oh yeah. I think with hair is one of those things that you get to see the results right away.
True.
And I just love the fact that like my kids, like my 3-year-old daughter can go through my hair stuff and put stuff in her hair. And I don't have to worry about, taking her to the hospital if she gets it in her eyes or, you know what I mean? Like it's I can share the detangler with my kids. And, that makes you think about like, well, why do we have kids lines? It's because the crap that's in adult lines are so bad that your kids are probably going to react to them. So we have a kids line. And I kind of had this journey with sunscreen as well, is I was finding that sunscreen just gave me all kinds of weird problems.
Oh, yeah.
And then I started using baby sunscreen after I had kids, and I'm like, oh my God, it's so much better.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Yep.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
this has been so fun.
Mhm.
Any last bit of advice you want to leave our audience with? If they're just kind of like, well, now I'm just really thinking more about hair. How do we think about hair care a little bit differently if we're switching to more natural methods? Like, is there
Absolutely.
particular steps that we haven't touched on already in the conversation that you want to just highlight?
Yeah, in general, yeah, definitely. So the main thing to start is like the shampoo and conditioner, because that's what everybody does, no matter what. So with that, start off with more of a gentler surfactant based kind of shampoo. Don't do the sulfates if you can help it. Do something like a sugar-based surfactant, which we use is what's known as polyglucose or desylglucoside is another name. So that one's really gentle. So if you see that in the ingredient deck, then you know that you're probably good. If you see any kind of silicones, so like dimethicone, cyclopentasiloxanes, I would try to stay away from those, especially if they're in the shampoo and conditioners. You don't really need that. And they'll put them in conditioners. They do it all the time. And the whole reason, and they don't even put in shampoos, because as you're opening up the cuticle, they want to, slick it back down. So you're kind of offsetting both of the issues and the ability for it to cleanse in that way by conditioning it right away. But so start off with shampoo and conditioner, get something that is more gentle, get something that is not as harsh, and that hopefully will have other good ingredients in there as well, like herbs or vitamins or whatnot, to give it more nourishment and actually help repair the hair. And then also a big thing is like, you don't need to wash your hair daily normally. If you're washing your hair daily because you're overproducing oil, check to see that you're not drying it out too much, because that could be what's causing your oil production. And then maybe you don't need to shampoo so often. And then with your styling products, a lot of times less is more. And, if you have a really good hair quality and health to your hair, a lot of times you don't need as many of the styling products, really in general. So it just depends on the quality and health. So when you're making the switch, take your time as well, work with the product, get used to it. Remember, it's never going to be probably the same as you're used to it. So give it a good shot. And then also try it a few times. We find that if someone, especially women, tries it once, maybe 3 weeks later, we feel differently about it, or so forth and so on. So and then because your hair, just like your skin, is going to change on a monthly cycle as well. So do give it some time to kind of see what works and what doesn't work with it, and work with it a little bit more. For example, we would give a lot of our products, the hair care products, to hairstylists at first to check it out. And they're really hard to convince because they're so used to the silicones. They're so used to the harsh surfactant shampoos that rinse out all the ingredients that they're putting in, right? But once they tried it, and then they tried it again and tried it again, they're like, wow, this really is a good product, and it still can perform at the styling level, what their whole industry and her
Better
needs.
or better. Like, it's actually
Yeah,
performing better and so quickly. I'm amazed. And
good.
I think that's a really important tip for anyone switching anything to a little bit more natural, because like even with sugaring, it's so different and it's so
Mhm,
natural that
mhm.
it takes a little bit of getting used to. But then,
Right.
once you do that, like, I mean, I've tried some of these products, and honestly, like, I love the way my hair feels. And that's only been like a couple of, I've just tried them out a couple of times. Um, it is a
Mhm,
bit of a adjustment for
mhm.
the routine and the hair and all of that, but so worth it. Like,
It
so worth
is.
it. So
It is. And what a lot of people find too is the adjustment ends up not being that big of adjustment once they figure out how to use it. Usually if there's an issue, it's like they're using too much or too little or whatnot of the product. So once they figure out what works best for their hair too and their needs, then they can go ahead and adjust as needed. But then they find, yeah, that they usually do have a much better overwhelming ability to style their hair, or let it do, have good hair days in general without it being an issues too. And a big thing too, before I let you go, is the scalp. That's a number of issues nowadays too. People are also really, really focused on, and it is becoming much more of a big thing in the industry of hair, is scalp care. And it's so huge because of course we don't want a lot of toxic ingredients in the scalp because they can get absorbed and whatnot. So we want to make sure that those are natural, but then they're also just not harmful and irritating. And the more you take care of your scalp, the more you can actually have better looking hair, because of course it all comes from there. So you want to make sure you nourish the follicle, cleanse the follicle, keep it free of occlusive items like your silicones or harsh items like your sulfates, so that it can actually perform and be healthier and be better overall. So
Well,
keep
yeah, thank you for touching on that, because that's something that's kind of been new for me as well. I've been hearing a lot about like scalp care, and it makes so much sense, like logically. And I've been trying out a couple of different products just to see, like, it makes sense. You got to clarify the scalp. And then guys, I swear she's not paying me for this, but then I tried your scalp clarifying.
the clarifier.
Oh my
Did it
God.
work? Yeah, did you like it?
Felt it like right away.
Good.
And it just, you can feel that the scalp, like, you could feel that it's been like cleared, or like something's happened, because it breathes. Like, I actually felt my scalp breathing after just the first use. And and it was a really different kind of sensation. But I love that, because one of my issues is because I have such dry hair. And now that we've had this conversation, I feel like maybe there's been too much silicone in my life.
It could be. Yeah.
But like, I really want to be able to, like, so it breaks a lot. So I want to grow healthier hair, and it starts with the scalp. And thank you on that, because that's huge for everybody, no matter what your hair type. You want to have a healthy scalp. And because of the nature of the skin on the scalp, buildup can happen really easily.
Yep, real quick. Absolutely. And a lot of people have issues with the scalp too, from dandruff to psoriasis to acne even. So a lot of that can just be helped by changing their product, because they could be sensitive or irritating to a product, but then also just having better products that can help clarify and reduce those inflammation activities and whatnot. So it is something to focus on, and it is becoming more and more popular nowadays for hairstylists and stuff in the market. We always recommend to start focusing on the scalp, create a scalp treatment, create a clarifying treatment, because it's going to improve all of their other services that they do and help the client's hair become even better. And then at home, try to cleanse your scalp about once a week, if not every other week or so, twice a month at the least is what we recommend. So that's going to help reduce the basically the dead skin cell buildup, because you still need to exfoliate the hair. And it also helps to reduce the product buildup that we use from silicone-based products or other products in general. So
awesome.
It's an important component that's often neglected, but nowadays it's becoming more and more known in the community. So it's great to see that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Regina. So
you're welcome. Yeah.
Start with the scalp, and your hair will thank you later.
Absolutely. And yeah, less is more, and be more gentle. You don't need real harsh surfactants. You don't need a lot of harsh products. You don't even need a shampoo daily. You know, that is a fallacy. So try to work with your hair a little bit more, and then it will help you and back. So giving you good hair days overall.
Yes. Thank you so much, Regina.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Include all of Regina's links, social, website, everything about RD Alchemy. Legitimately, probably my most recommended line. Everything I've tried from the line has been awesome. So thank you for doing what you do. You're really changing the space and changing the natural game. So thank you so much, Regina.
Thank you. It was wonderful talking with you. Absolutely. Glad to do it.
Thank you. Okay, guys. See you later.
Have a great day. Take care.